Yo, what up, guys? Jay Kanan back again, and this time we're going to be looking into FL Studio, and this is going to be a new type of series I'm going to do. It's not going to be a crazy long series. I'll probably just do a few of these, and we'll do other stuff too, of course, you know what I mean? But basically, what I wanted to use this for was to talk about a few key points on what I look for and how I approach mixing, and maybe some tips that I could kind of share with you. When you're making a beat or when you're mixing your beat. So in this episode, we're basically going to talk just on a few key points, what we're going to look for. We're not going to look through the whole beat, but I'm going to talk about just a few things that you could think about when you approach your next beat. So what I'm going to do here, let me minimize this. What we're going to do here is, this is a beat I finished maybe just a few days ago, and I thought this would be a good one since there's a lot of elements in it, as you could see. And basically, we're just going to talk about a few things, like I already mentioned. And so without further ado, let me just play the beat first so you guys can hear what we're looking at, and then we'll move forward from there. All right? So let's give this a little play. Sorry, I don't know why I keep having these buffer issues. I changed the audio settings too and the buffer speed, and it's still been an issue. Let's just gonna play it from the hook. Let's try a different part with less stuff going on here. I really apologize for that. I'm gonna get that fixed too. Alright, this will work just fine anyways for what we're going to talk about. And so, yeah, so basically you can hear it's a pretty simple beat. I mean, for the most part, besides the hook, it's got a few different layers on it, but kind of more of a melodic type of tune. And so, yeah, so what I'm going to talk about today are two things. A lot of people ask me, I get a lot of messages and a lot of people emailing me, and especially recently from the last few videos I dropped, people asking me to make a beat video or a mixing video, a mixing video for beats and how I mix my beats. And basically, I'm going to go over one concept in this video, and so we can keep it kind of short, and then we'll make a few other, videos with different concepts and approaching different things. So in this video, I'm going to talk about mixing, or not really mixing, but just kicks and 808s, because that seems to still be, a pretty, frequently asked question from a lot of people is, how do you mix your kicks and your 808s? Do you do anything special to them, and a whole bunch of stuff, you know what I mean? So we're going to cover that today. And if I just, solo the kick and bass, you'll hear it. So it sounds really clean together, really clean together, and it just works nice, and it really cuts through the mix, as you heard before. Right, cuts through really nice. So here is the big thing, man, and this is going to be the biggest, and really pay attention to this, because it's really simple, actually, and this is what's crazy, because a lot of people ask me, what do you do? And oftentimes I don't really even know what to say, and I'm going to tell you why I don't know what to say, because let's start with the bass. You can see on the right here, I have nothing in there, and I mean nothing. You could see it right here, slot 1 all the way to slot 10. I have 0 effects in my effects chain on the bass. Nothing. All right? And the kick, I only have an EQ, and if I were to open it up, you can see that it's only a slight bump at 55 just to fatten up the. It's not really fatten up the kick anyway. It's just that, the kick's already good basically. But let me solo just the kick. Right, with the bass. So if you're looking at the mixer right now and you're looking at the faders, you can see the very first thing that you'll notice is the bass fader is like it's substantially far down there. And if you look at the metering levels here, you'll see the bass is almost half, the velocity as the kick. So, tip 1, the bass, the 808, really does not need to be that loud. It really doesn't, because if you really think about what a bass is doing, a bass is only exciting sub-level frequencies, under 120 hertz. For the most part, the meat of it is under 120 hertz. So, the bass is pretty much alone in that area. There's just absolutely no reason why it needs to be crazy loud. And I'm going to open up one other session after this, and just to show you again, in most of my beats, it just doesn't really need to be that loud. So then you mix the instruments around that, and you have a much better, a much better turnout with the mix as far as that goes. So that's the first thing, is the bass doesn't really need to be that loud with the kick. Another thing that I do is, if you look, this is how I kind of balance out my sound. If I was to go back to the hook, hopefully it won't distort, man. I hope to God it won't. But if I go back to the hook, and let's just solo all these and the bass. So no kick, just the bass and the instruments. You'll notice that my instruments, if anything, they're never really louder than the bass, especially because there's a lot of instruments. So you add up all the levels together, and then it becomes louder, so on and so forth. But you'll notice that the bass meter, it's almost going to always match the loudest point of the instrument here, and that's kind of a theory of mine, and that's just the way I've been doing these things. You know what I mean? So so check it out. So you can see it right there. I wish there was a freeze option on here so you could see it. One more time. So the loudest is the piano. So just something to keep in mind. That's how I usually go about it with the kick. Then when you start to add these other elements inside of your mix, not even going over stereo imaging at the moment, but just when you start to add these other things in there, it becomes what it is. You start to mix around these few elements, and you just kind of take a hold of the mix from there. You know what I mean? Once you kind of establish the meat. So just to, like I said, just to sum it up real quick, you'll see on all my mixes, I don't have shit on here. So you can, if you listen to a lot of my beats, you'll see the same thing. I might, sometimes do a side chain, technique, just to kind of, if I want to use a fatter kick and the bass is still kind of fat and I don't want it to, collide or anything like that, I might use a small side chain just to take care of that. But other than that, it's pretty simple, And so that's tip number 1. Tip number 2, just to clarify tip number 1, the bass level does not need to be that loud. Okay, so just remember that. The bass level does not need to be that loud. And one way you can gain stage the bass level is after, when you have the bass at a nice level with the kick, you can kind of gain stage the instruments to kind of match around the bass, and then after that you can play with it. And we'll talk more about that in another video, how I mix instruments, all right? So the second tip has nothing even to do with the song or the mixer, but it has to do with everything to your approach to getting a cleaner mix. And it starts before you even, while you're creating the beat. And this is a theory here. Sound selection. I said it. So that right there is going to be the hugest thing with making beats. I've seen a lot of people that use the same kick for every beat, the same bass. If you're using that kind of thing, we're using the same, sounds, the same samples every beat, then you might be okay. You know what I mean? But if you're trying different things like I do, each beat's going to take me into a different type of, I don't know where I'm going with it. So I'm going to use different sounds, different samples, so on and so forth. But the biggest thing for me is sound selection. And I think that right there is literally going to make or break your entire mix and the song itself. So choosing the right sounds that work with other sounds, that is freaking key, man. I can't stress that enough, is choosing the right sounds is key. That's going to be the biggest thing. That's why it's important to invest, in kits and sounds and different things like that, because these are quality, and I'm talking quality sounds, you know what I mean? These are going to make or break your beat, and this is going to decipher whether it's going to be an issue for you in mixing and what's going to make it easier for you in mixing. As you could see on here, I was very careful on what kick I use and what bass I use specifically, you know what I mean, for this beat. And like I said, the reason, for that alone, I don't have to do shit to it. I literally don't have to do shit to it. And you could hear it yourself. You can't tell me it doesn't sound clean. You don't have to like the beat at all, but I'm saying you can't tell me it doesn't sound clean. And so, very important. Sound selection. And as far as the bass goes, mixing your bass with the kicks, just keep in mind your bass does not have to be crazy loud. You want it to be present, sure, but it doesn't have to be overbearingly loud to be like, yo, this is an 808. I make trap beats. You know what I'm saying? No, dude, you don't have to do that. There's a way you can mix things in. It has to do the two biggest things, I'll say, EQ and leveling. Two of the biggest things with mixing. I mean, most of everything in my mixes revolve around EQ and gain staging. That's the two biggest things. The other thing that I would do on my master bus is I use Isotope Ozone 7, and this is only for two reasons. And the first reason is I can use the dynamic multiband compressor here, and all that allows me to do is just to glue the beat together a little bit more. So all I can do with this is basically kind of glue the bass and the kick together just a little bit. And but here's the thing, like I said, I chose the right samples first, the kick and the 808, chose the right ones to work well with each other, and it makes it easier. So if I soloed the sub levels here, you can hear it's already pretty tight. Same thing if I solo the mid range, the low mids, band. So I just put a kind of a low ratio, 2.7 and 1 there. And the attack's always pretty low for me, and then I'll leave the release a little bit higher, you know what I'm saying, around 300, something like that, just so the gate closing on the compressor is a little slower, because I don't want to, you know what I mean, I just want to keep that kind of nice and tight. So that's basically it. That's my tip. We'll keep it short from there. I don't even know how short this is actually. Probably 10 minutes, something like 13 minutes. Okay, that's not bad. And but that's basically it. I wouldn't go any crazier than that. And that's basically the gist from all my mixes. I will get a little bit more in depth, with instruments. But as far as kick and bass or kicks and 808s, it's really not that crazy for me. I don't really do too much. I've seen a lot of dudes that are using compressors and all kinds of shit, and I just don't think you have to do that. And keep this in mind too, because obviously, like you've seen my other videos, or if you haven't, I do a lot of mix engineering for a lot of artists as well. So I mix and master songs, like full songs, and a lot of them will send me beats from other producers that are overly compressed and have no headroom for vocals or nothing like that. And even like I said, when I'm using Ozone 7 on the master, even when I go to the limiting stage, which is a maximizer here, You'll see I have it at negative 7.2 with the out ceiling at 0.1, negative 0.1. But you'll still see the reduction here of the kicks from the limiter. It's barely hitting, and this is the reason. The reason for this is I'm bumping up the sound and I'm making the beat louder. But the thing is key is I'm not losing any dynamics, and that's what you don't want to do. You don't want to lose the dynamics. You want to retain those dynamics because that's what's going to make the beat sound that much better, and it makes it easier for the mix engineer to mix vocals on top of that. And that's basically it, guys. So that's a small insight of how I approach the kicks and 808s. And it's like that for a lot. Oh, I did want to do one more thing real quick, trying to make this short. If I just want to open up another beat for you real quick here. What does not save it because I already have it saved. And let's see. I just want to show you another beat where it's the same thing. I don't put anything on the kick or the 808s. Now there is a very small there's a small effects process that I will use for 808 specifically, and it's for certain basses, but we'll cover that in another video. But it's very specific, and I rarely use it now because I've gotten better at choosing the right basses. So this is another beat I worked on. I'll just play it real quick. So you basically hear that if I just take off the sample here. Again, look at how low the bass is. It's just, and if you look at my kick, I have a parametric EQ on there, just basically cutting out, taking away just part of the low frequencies at 29 hertz. And then on the bass, there's only a love filter there, but that's just for a transition part. That has nothing to do with it. And I just cut out some of the highs just because there was a lot of distortion here. I just didn't want that much. But that's it. You know, like I said, you'll only see me EQ certain things, but there's nothing really more going on in that. I don't really have to do too much compression. Before I do anything, I will not automate, but I will just go into, if I had to, I would just go into the step sequencer. I mean, not step sequencer, the piano roll, and just like, you know, if I wanted to, I would just take one of these down. But, you know, I don't have to do that because it's all about sound selection. And that makes or breaks a lot of things. So, like I said, if you look here. You see how the melody is practically the same level as the bass. And they're not going to be fighting each other at all. Because the way I have this EQ'd, same thing. I'm taking away the low frequencies. And so they're not fighting. They're just beautifully complementing each other. So that's basically it, guys. I hope you could take something away from this and just remember, choose the right sounds, get quality sounds. And the biggest thing that can change your beats is correctly gain staging the levels of all your instruments together. And you don't have to blast the shit out of your 808s and your basses. Hope that helps, man. Again, I always appreciate, likes and comments, and anybody who's subscribing to my channel is like super dope. So I just can't thank anybody enough for that. So I appreciate it. Comment below what you would like me to do next, what you would like to see, and I'll try my best to put something out, for that, and we'll just go from there. Hope you guys have an awesome day, man. Happy New Year, and we'll be back again soon. Peace.